United Nations Children's Fund says more than 8,000 Nigerian boys and girls have been recruited as child soldiers since 2009. The Unicef Chief Field Officer in Borno, Nguyen, made this known in a statement marking the International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers, also known as Red Hand Day. According to Nguyen, it is unacceptable and unconscionable for children to be recruited for conflict-related reasons by armed groups. He called on the Nigerian government to ensure that children formerly recruited as soldiers should be supported for proper integration. Well, for more on this, let's bring in Arise analyst Mahmud Jega on Newsnight tonight. Thanks for joining us. Well, the figures are quite baffling. In 13 years, nearly 1 million homes destroyed, 5,000 classrooms razed, 8,000 girls and boys recruited child soldiers, and that's from the same UNICEF report. Let's talk about Nigeria yet to sign the handover protocol for children, who encounter armed conflict, and how that really should have protected them from this unfortunate situation. What does this really mean? What are the implications of this?
No, first of all, you see, talking about 8,000 children recruited into armed groups. Obviously, that's not the Nigerian armed forces. I don't think there are any underaged people in the Nigerian armed forces. They don't have any reason to recruit
no, not within the Nigerian armed forces.
Yeah, but the insurgents.
That's insurgents, definitely.
Now, the insurgents, of course, whenever they override a village or a town, they conscript all the able-bodied young men, including maybe children of 10, 11, 12, 13, because they don't have enough people to do the fighting for them. Now, they are talking about when these child soldiers surrender or they are captured in battle, there should be a protocol. It's a very difficult thing. The armed forces have their own de-radicalization program, as they call it, which is very controversial because community leaders, everybody is saying these people can hardly be re-socialized easily. It's a danger to release them into society. And even the children, if you catch a 13-year-old who has been fighting for Boko Haram for a year or two or more, you can just, because he's a child, release him, because first you have to be sure that he will not constitute a danger to society. You can sign this protocol. I don't know exactly what it says, but there has to be a holding.
Nigeria actually ratified it since 2012, and how many years after yet?
We have many treaties like that we are not implementing, but we must. It is a gradual process of de-radicalization and re-socialization before you can release some of the captured insurgents back into society, whether they are adults or children.
Now you've raised an issue. Well, the handover basically is to, but because they are detained, and so they're wondering, these are kids, so why do you detain them? Why don't you, like you're talking about de-radicalization? So what will be the best way or approach to support such children for proper integration into the society?
There are agencies that are specialized for that. Some of the international agencies, it's not only in Nigeria, in Uganda, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in Burma, in Burundi, in South Sudan, in Colombia and some of the Latin American countries. This problem kept occurring of child soldiers. And there are organizations that have specialized in re-socializing and de-radicalizing them before it is safe to release and reintegrate them back. In many cases, these are children who lost their families, were disconnected from their family. So it's not like you can take the person and hand him back over to his family. Exactly. You have to find another kind of family for him where he will integrate. It's a cruel problem, but it can be done gradually and carefully.
How about preventing it in the first place? Because what this shows is that Nigeria is not able to protect her own children. Does the Nigerian government even know where these children are? How much more talk about extricating them, from the hands of the armed groups?
The only way, obviously, is to end those conflicts, because don't forget, the insurgents overrun large parts of the country. They overrun towns and villages, abducted, whether it is female students, took them away, boys, they killed the ones that they think were made amenable, and they took the ones that volunteered and went to fire. And sometimes you have to volunteer because otherwise you could be shot. So there is no way for the government to protect the children in areas occupied by the insurgents. Exactly, except if we can end the conflict.
All right. How much harm, Mahmud, or what danger really does recruiting these children raise, or pose rather to our society? For example, these children you and I know are not going to school.
No, they are not going to school. They are not properly socialized through families and churches and mosques. They are being socialized into society through armed groups. That's a terrible danger, because even after the conflict ends, they don't have the proper social orientation. So they are likely to be violent, dislocated. They don't have any other skill that they can make a living out of. So they are a continuous danger, really, to society. So it needs a very long program of reorientation, resocialization, and giving them a skill and a trade to do before they can reintegrate into society. It's a terrible problem.
Yeah, and protecting Nigeria's children from suffering the worst impacts of conflict is a job that needs to be done. So what are the short, the medium, and the long-term measures that need to be put in place as quickly as possible, because this is a real danger?
Major number one is to end the conflict. Because unless the war is over, you see, there is even a limit to what you can do, because there are some communities still under the control of the insurgents in the northeast, and they are still recruiting. That is why they carry out raids sometimes into different areas in northern Yobe, or sometimes into Adama and other places, in order to recruit. So really, unless we defeat the insurgents completely, that is the beginning. That is when you can now stop any further recruitment. That is when you can retrieve all the child soldiers that are in their hands, and then you begin the long, slow, and difficult process of de-radicalizing and reintegrating them into society and giving them education and some skills that they can use to make a living. But the conflict has to end first. Before it ends, the recruitment of child soldiers continues, unfortunately.
It's almost like
what's their tool, really, for recruiting those children? I know that the Boko Haram means education is forbidden. But what's the, because if you can address their greatest psychological tool for winning over those children into their camp, then you're probably halfway or three-quarter way to getting the problem solved. So what's their tool, to recruiting these children in the first place?
No, as we said, it's not only Boko Haram. There are rebel groups in many parts of the world that cannot find enough adults to fight their cause, who resort to children. And children have some use in because they are easier to manipulate. Especially in many cases, they also feed them with drugs. So children can do maybe what an adult may think twice. Maybe if you tell an adult, shoot that old man, he may think twice, even if he is a rebel. But a 13-year-old child, especially, is already high on drugs, will not think twice. So some of the worst atrocities in the Liberian and Sierra Leone and Burundi and South Sudan civil wars were committed by children, exactly, by child soldiers. So that's why the rebel groups seem to like them.
Because of their innocence and their seeming not being dangerous or on the forefront. Thank you so much, Mahmud Jega, there, Arise analyst.